So, Rick, we should probably talk now as Shinobi is changing mics.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe I should say, hello, everybody.
Oh, that was weird.
All right, Shinobi. All right, everybody. We've been having a little bit of technical issue. Let's see if we can get the audio working. Shinobi, go for it.
No. No.
Wow.
Not good.
It is.
Anyhow, then
Should I grab the block number?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. You know, I don't have a block clock pulled up, but I should probably pull one up real quick just because I don't think Shinobi's going to be able to get us the block height today. Uh-oh. Is that him? Is he back? Uh-oh. Okay. Maybe we got you now.
I don't know. Am I?
Yeah, I hear you, man. All right. Standard intro. The music just ended. Cut. Go.
Nope. It's ruined. There's no episode number. There is no block height. This episode didn't happen.
No, we're doing it live, like we were saying. You know, you screw it up, you just keep going roll with the punches. So yeah, where are we at in the block height, man?
Or are you going to just whiny rage quit and accept defeat?
That's it.
It's block height 3. Just 3.
Oh my god, dude. Okay, we didn't make it past episode 183. That's how many episodes of Digest we could create.
All right, yeah, it's black height 584,816, and this is episode 183.
Was that
Fuck
so
you,
hard?
Is it Hangouts is an issue, or is it Linux, or is it multiple systems, different mics, inputs, out? And it seems like things just get complicated, and next thing you know, there's an issue with the software from the hardware, all that stuff.
No, it's Hangouts. It's all Hangouts. I'm blaming Hangouts.
I'm gonna have to ask Google about that.
Alrighty, so what's going on, everybody? We're just going to pretend like none of those sound issues just happened.
Nothing. Just dealing with the summer sun. And like I said, supposed to have some meeting with Google tomorrow. I'm pretty interested to hear what they have to tell me.
What kind of?
It's a dinner. I don't know. I think it's something to do with meetups. I think they're trying to take over meetups website, like they take over everything, right? And Meetup is an interesting website where people actually get together locally. I think they're trying to take over that, but I'm not sure. Really, it's just a dinner. I need to figure out what's going on.
When Google met Block Digest.
They're gonna buy Block Digest out. We can say it now. It's public.
Maybe they know what we're up to and they're going to poison me out there. That's just part of my insurance plan is to mention it here live. So if I go missing tomorrow evening, people will be like, oh, shit, Google. Alphabet, they got him.
Ew.
All right,
there will be no buying out from Google here, sir.
No way.
No.
So that's what I've been doing.
Only Microsoft.
Yeah. I'm sure Microsoft, if they hook me up, maybe I'll work in that decentralized ID program. That seems like some smart stuff. Okay, but that's me. What's been going on with you, Janine Dopar?
Well, I went to the Cij Journalism Conference, and it was quite interesting. There was a couple of interesting sessions. I was disappointed by the fact that I believe Gavin McFadden is the co-founder of the organization, and he died in 2016, and he was always a very strong supporter of Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning, and so ever since he died at these conferences, they've been giving memorial speeches or lectures at the workshop, and I believe also they do something at the main conference. And I was disappointed by the fact that they chose a woman named Maria Ressa, who has been in the news lately. She's the CEO of what is it called? Wrangler? I actually can't remember it right now. Let me Google. Or not Google. No, don't Google. That's very bad.
Go.
Not Rappler. She's the CEO of Rappler, Filipino journalist. And so, she was giving the memorial lecture, and I would have expected, a memorial lecture for Gavin McFadden to, reflect his views to a certain extent. And not only did she include a article in her presentation that said that WikiLeaks has links to the Kremlin, which was completely unsubstantiated, but she also, during the Q&A, when someone asked why does she not think that Assange is a journalist, she said she didn't want to get into that issue, but essentially she repeated the usual talking points of putting people in harm's way, blah, 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 dumping information, not giving context, blah, 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 all of the usual stuff. So I complained about that. I was pretty disappointed, but I think in general, the event was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, a journalism conference in this day and age, I'm sure is pretty bleak. I mean, is what I would imagine. It's like some people standing around trying to, say like, man, is journalism dead? And then, yeah, you get that sort of presenter talking about Assange that way. Yeah, I mean, journalism is kind of in a state of disarray right now, just like a lot of places where things are getting disrupted. Nopara, how are you doing, man? What's been going on with you?
Honestly, I'm overwhelmed. Not your high school student overwhelmed, your university student examination phase overwhelmed, but I completely overwhelmed. I have hundreds of messages I cannot reply to them, and 50 pull requests. 50. You know how much Bitcoin Core has? 200 something. So, but I'm the only one who's really reviewing it, and I don't trust other reviewers. So it just, I'm not sure how to go forward. It's crazy. Crazy.
Close your DMs.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm doing, is that I think I'm leaving Twitter because of what I just said. So Mr. Hoarder can be happy because I won't take him on Hive 1.
Yeah. I've seen that new level of overwhelming contributions you've been getting over there. Yeah, so I imagine you've been pretty busy, and yeah, some days you got to figure out ways to, open or close the shutoff valve to where you can kind of shut down the noise a little bit and get done what you want to get done.
Anyhow, let's get into Blockstream. How about that?
Yeah.
Want to start?
Hey, yeah, we've had kind of an awkward, wonky intro, but here, let's get to it. What's going on in the news, man?
I see how it is. No one's gonna ask me what I did.
Yeah.
How I am.
What did you do?
Nothing. I just wanted someone to ask.
That to be paid, or what you said last time.
Well, just a really quick update. Blockstream's Green wallet, formerly known as Green Bits, and a few other things, has just launched Liquid support. So you can now actually use Liquid directly as an end user through an SPV wallet. And I don't know, this is really a big jump in terms of all the little puzzle pieces so that it can actually get used. Like, it's online. All of the partners involved in it are starting to integrate the software into their exchange stack. The full mode software and wallet has been out there, and now you have an SPV wallet that's even compatible with a few hardware wallets. So, I mean, yeah, this is really starting to flesh out. Like, a trader can now say, I think the Rock and Bitfinex are the two ones actually live right now, aside from SideShift. But yeah, trader can deposit some Bitcoin into Liquid, send it to Finex or the Rock, trade really quickly, withdraw to their own wallet, all with 1 minute block times and very low fees right now with confidential transactions. So, I mean, yeah, nice little round of applause. Everybody can go trap a tiny bit of dust BTC and play around with confidential transactions. Hooray!
Released into the Green wallet app.
What?
So the news about is that liquid support for Blockstream Green. Is this about the Green wallet application or not?
Yeah. Yeah, it's called Blockstream Green now. But yeah, it's full Liquid support in the SPV wallet now.
All right. I have it on my phone. That's my main wallet, so I'm gonna check it out.
Heck yeah, man.
Bwahaha, and in 2 days he'll be building CoinJoin tools with CT.
Yeah, that's a possibility too. It's all liquid.
So it's what it's not important to build useful tools for Liquid.
It's it's not as decentralized, so I'm just not that interested. I'm interested in the tech, but you know, it's just not as decentralized. That's it. There are properties of good money, and if one thing being hurt a little bit, then I'm not that interested anymore. But I think that's great, and I would actually like to see some CoinJoin with confidential transactions, because we are talking about it a lot, but no one has ever built, and the only thing that has ever been created, only research, was a value shuffle by Tim Ruffin and others. So yeah, this would be interesting to it really works, you know.
Okay, I'm sorry. All I took away from that was people who don't use things that aren't decentralized enough don't deserve privacy, and that's really fucked up, man. That's a really fucked up attitude.
Well, either way, man, I think this is pretty awesome to see, man. I can't wait to try out some confidential transactions myself. And like, yeah, you know, there's a few people around here where we use the Green wallet on a regular basis. So maybe we do some confidential transactions and really put that stuff through the ringer.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's a nice thing here now. Like, people have the full range of accessibility that the main network has. You know, there's differing degrees of security models as far as key storage. Obviously, still with the network itself's trust and security trade-offs underneath that. But, like, I mean, come on, no part. I know you want to build a CoinJoin tool, for liquid. I know you do. I know you do.
I don't think that's the way forward. Although I can imagine a future when most of the volume goes on to liquid and not on the on chain. I don't think that's likely, but I can imagine that could happen. But I would not advocate that future, you know.
Wait, you would not advocate a future where trading activity takes place in something like liquid instead of swamping the main chain with all of that activity?
I'm not talking about trading activity. I'm talking about just normal user transaction activity. So yeah, Liquid has been built with a specific vision in mind, but you can use it for other things. So well, maybe we can move on some volume into Liquid from Bitcoin. It just I because it's such a thing that it works until it doesn't. So if if someone wants to shut down just like Wasabi, then it can be shut down. And yeah, other liquid networks can
Eh,
but we can go down the rabbit hole of this. Just
I mean,
it's not
I
big.
get what you're trying to say, but it's not exactly equivalent because like something like a mixing server requires one jurisdiction to act. And you need, I mean, I like I said, I get what you're saying, but it takes much more cross jurisdictional coordination to do that with something like liquid, although it could still be done. But it's again like the overall point though is like they still deserve privacy, no para. All trust models deserve privacy.
Of course it is. I thought you were being being ironic or something when you were saying that was your takeaway, that I don't think it deserves privacy.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna cut that to here, and we just pretend all this conversation didn't happen. That was funny.
Yeah, now I'm confused, so I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is Craig Wright. Uh,
Oh yeah.
so CCN reported, which is actually CCN is shutting down. I think that's what we were talking about, this news organization previously. So they reported that what happened in court is that Craig Wright was, well, no surprise to anyone, was providing a document, and then it turned out that the font that they used, Calibri typeface, was actually created after the document has been created. So yeah, that was a huge fail there. And if there is no comment, then I'm going to go on to the next topic, which is the exact same topic actually, which is WizSec. Is a blockchain analysis company, but people consider it a good kind of blockchain analysis company because their whole thing was created to find the Madgax coins. Anyhow, they created a report. Actually, they wrote 3 reports on Craig Wright. This is the third part, and I'm not usually doing this, but I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to read their conclusion here because I think this is something that, if you have any takeaway from Craig Wright, then be this. So look, Wright has been throwing around word salad and memes for years. Hopefully, reading this has just been an amusing further confirmation of your suspicions. If you are not already getting a pretty good idea of the guy from everything he's been up to so far and is still willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and believe him, then congratulations, you are the kind of scammers hope to run into. Wright has for many years been constantly surrounded by forged documents supporting whatever he's claiming at the time, usually backdated and often written in someone else's name. If one document becomes irreparably discredited publicly, he denounces it as forgery that must have been planted by someone. If that's the case, then these mysterious forgers must be Wright's guardian angels, since the documents always seem to appear whenever Wright needs them, and saying that Wright needs them to say. It's only later, after they are publicly discredited and as forgeries, that they appear damaging to Wright by being forgeries. These forgeries are also usually also pretty sloppy. Digital alterations aren't very deep, just the basics and enough to pass the cursory glance. They aren't meant to stand up to expert scrutiny. They are meant to convince laypeople who are satisfied to uncritically take things presented to them at face value, where document just needs to exist to appear believable. So Wright himself, the forger and the massive serial fraudster, that's certainly what the plaintiffs are implying, as some pretty suggestive evidence for. And this kind of circumstance does appear to have been following Wright around for years. So that's the conclusion. There is a few more paragraph there, but anyhow, I suggest everyone to read the WizSec, not only this third part, but the whole Craig Wright series, which is just is great. And if you don't understand what the heck is going on, this is the exact thing what you need to read about it. So yeah, thanks WizSec for this, and goodbye Craig Wright. See you in jail. Wait, no. See you. Not.
You want to break down like what the last two things they've written on Wright are?
I'm not sure I understood.
Like, give a quick summary of what the last two pieces they've written on Wright.
Oh, the last two pieces. I don't know. I read the last few places a long time ago, but I think this pretty much covers the takeaway on this.
Bum, bum, bum. I see troubled times in Craig's future.
I mean, but seriously, if someone, if he don't go to jail for, it's just so obvious in the court, they see exactly what he's doing. It- it's unbelievable that how can he still do what he's doing. It's like I have no words, you know. He can't
Well,
can't keep scamming people left and right, and he's doing this for not years, decades. He's crazy.
well, I mean, this is why reputation used to be such an important part of society, Nopara, because you couldn't pull this off forever. And I mean, even in today's world with today's population, like he's running into that inevitable truth that you can't just pull this kind of shit off forever. Like that everything is collapsing in around his head at this point. Like everything.
I would say he's used to it, and
Not like
Okay, so explain this to me. There is irrefutable evidence that Craig Wright is a serial fraudster, and this evidence is not new. This evidence goes back for years. And how can he still do what he's doing? This is.
There is irrefutable proof that Prescott Bush laundered money for Nazis during World War II and committed treason. Regardless, his son George H.W. and his grandson George W. Bush both went on to be president.
Yeah, but they rule the world, so
People can be really stupid with things that they can't convince themselves are true. And yeah.
All right, yeah. So Craig is finally going to go to jail at some point in all this madness. I mean, like, yeah, it's starting to all kind of pile up. Like you're saying, the evidence is really starting to pile up that he's just a fraudster. So, I mean, eventually he's going to have to go serve somewhere. You think it'll be here around Florida where he's been talking recently, or back home in Australia?
He's going to go to jail. I mean, I don't see any way around that.
you see, we are going to move on to talk about Jihan right now. And the interesting thing is that after talking about Craig Wright and we are talking about Jihan, he's going to seem like a good boy in comparison. But do your best, Shinobi.
All right. So the spin-off that Jihan Wu has purportedly been involved with off of Bitmain is actually going live. So it's called Matrixport, and it is based out of Singapore. And this might be a little tinfoily, but I see a lot of things just in this one Yahoo article from Yahoo Finance on this. It's currently employing about 100 people, and a lot of them are people who were let go from Bitmain during their recent restructuring after the failed IPO attempt. And what they're trying to do is kind of establish a BitGo competitor to kind of step in and play not only just the OTC functions and financial services, but also custody functions of things. And they've specifically set up in Singapore to skirt the trading ban in China and are trying to kind of build connections with miners in China to, stir up liquidity and actually get the business off the ground. And the current CEO is actually also a former, not only Bitmain employee, but a shareholder and founding member with 4% stake in Bitmain. But he's also the guy who ran their investment arm. So the guy who was kind of calling the shots when Bitmain started jumping around, making key investments during the New York Agreement, 2X, and the UASF, and companies like Circle and BitPay, and just kind of throwing money around to try to shift the corporate landscape towards Bcash. And I find it very interesting the way this person has kind of left Bitmain to take control of Matrixport, and the whole way they're structuring the company and trying to court all of these miners in China as large customers off the bat. Just because it's the person involved was clearly involved in them effectively bribing other companies in the space. And it's also weird given the huge failure of Bitmain's Bcash move that Jihan would kind of push another bad idea in trying to build up their initial customer base out of miners in a country where the government is kind of trying to slowly push them out of the country. It just all seems kind of very odd and like not really well thought through in terms of long-term planning. Like there is some kind of ulterior motive here. And just the way it picked up all of these people cut from Bitmain, all of the same like leadership and investors. Even Bitmain is invested in this company themselves. And just the connections they're positioning in the ecosystem to try to start off. It just seems very fishy, and like Jihan is just right back to getting up to things like how Bitmain acted during the entire New York agreement and UASF fiasco.
We all know he's not gonna go away.
But it's just also like what?
Let's hope.
Like how does he?
Sorry, go ahead.
Like how does he? Sorry, how does he expect this to like work under the Communist Party when what he's effectively trying to do here is facilitate capital flight for large miners? Like them being able to mine Bitcoin in China, which the government is trying to phase out, send that to this company based out of Singapore, and then sell these assets in a foreign jurisdiction. Like he's literally just setting up a huge capital flight machine for large miners in China. And like, why would he think the government wouldn't come down on that with a hammer, like right off the bat, and him particularly?
It's all about Guanxi. So he don't have enough connections to make sure that Bitcoin is not getting effed over in China, but he has enough to make sure that people will be able to get out money of China. At least that's so he just lowered his risk. You know, it's not like he would change too many things, so it would
But
be
that's the
unlikely
thing,
to
though.
go after him.
He didn't lower his risk. He's a Chinese national who is building a business that's specifically trying to help Chinese citizens move large amounts of value to another country and sell it there.
Yeah, I'm just
Like
saying
the
that
government.
compared to what he would have been able to do, like open a Bitcoin shop in China, which is obviously cannot do that anymore. You cannot pay with Bitcoin in China anymore. So compared to ideas like that, he thought, well, okay, this is less risky, and I think I can handle this and handle the officials. So that's what I
But
think.
like that's kind of what I'm saying, man, is like if you have that attitude, you have very good connections in the Communist Party, because that's not the kind of thing you can just go, hey, I'm going to do this. And the government goes, okay. Like capital flight is one of the biggest concerns regarding like massive amounts of wealth in China. And one of the big things they're worried about with things like Bitcoin is the large rate mesh as something that the government would allow or not come down on unless you are very well connected.
He's a billionaire. He wouldn't be a billionaire if he wouldn't be very well connected.
Yeah, and this is like, I'm sorry, I'm just going to cut in. I mean, China's been going through a lot. Like, I mean, if you just look at what's going on in Hong Kong and them trying to repatriate that area and a lot of the crackdowns going on there. And I mean, there's all this stuff going on with these ghost cities that have been going on for a long, long time. And there's a lot of trouble there within that Communist Party. And I mean, just because it is like one, party and that goes by the party mantra, I mean, for sure, there's individuals in that party with their own interests. And I'm sure that there's some alignments that are kind of, ready for that sort of big split within China if it happens, and how exactly that goes. I mean, maybe Jihan, I'm sure he's got some friends in Mongolia because he was set up there for a long time. And I mean, Mongolia's, border region is not really well governed by Mongolia. I mean, it's some interesting areas without that much real solid government structure as far as the people that are there. And it's hard to tell, but I mean, I imagine that there's a lot of conflict there, even within the Communist Party. And that's probably who Jahan's aligned himself with.
It just seems a ballsy move. Like he's doing something the government is very staunchly against, specifically courting individuals as customers that the government is trying to push out of the country. Like this.
Are you seeing what's going on in Hong Kong? There's some brave people on the streets there, man. I mean, like, shit's going down here.
That's one city that's legally entitled to their state of independence. Like this, that's a whole nother ball game in mainland China.
Yeah, I think it's not very related either. But we're talking so much about Jihan that I start to root for him. So maybe we want to change topic.
Well, I mean, it's not too much of a change of topic. Yeah, what else is going on here with China?
Things
eh?
are going on with China. So, yeah, this is actually, it's also to do with Facebook and Libra and that situation developing. But this is just like this is like the biggest vindication of my attitude towards Libra since it was concretely announced that I have seen yet. Wang Xin, the director of the People's Bank of China's research bureau, has been looking at Libra. And two key quotes I want to read are, if Libra is widely used for payments, cross-border payments in particular, would it be able to function like money and accordingly have a large influence on monetary policy, financial stability, and the international monetary system? And another thing that he was very much concentrating on and concerned with was Libra's plan to be backed by a currency basket and what role the US dollar would play in there. And his quote regarding this was, if the digital currency is closely associated with the US dollar, it could create a scenario under which sovereign currencies would coexist with a US dollar-centric digital currency. But there would in essence be one boss, that is the US dollar and the United States. If so, it would bring a series of economic, financial, and even political or international political consequences. And like this just goes to show how much of a perceived threat, just even the idea of Facebook doing something like this with the ability to bootstrap network effect that widely is just no. Like China is literally looking at this as a national security issue. And in between the lines saying that they would respond negatively to the United States itself if something like this were to happen, where the US dollar was a significant component of that currency basket. Like this, like just the idea of this happening has a superpower implicitly threatening political consequences with another superpower if this private company does this. Like this is not gonna happen. This air quote cryptocurrency is not going to launch. This is not going to happen. And these companies are going to get smashed for the million reasons governments have to lash out and smash them right now. Because this is literally like, you can argue, and I would argue, that Bitcoin is the type of threat that actually exists, that could actually happen and not be stopped to do things like this. But they can't do anything about it. They can't see anything to do about it. A lot of them might not even take it seriously. But just the idea of Facebook doing this has them reacting the way they would to Bitcoin if there wasn't that denial or that self-delusion. Like, they're not going to allow this to happen because, unlike Bitcoin, they can actually not allow this to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how Facebook's Libra coin, like the biggest thing and impact it's having really is just like how much these governments are starting to take these seriously, where before they didn't really see it as, a threat to national security. But you have a company like Facebook who has, openly stated that they plan on influencing elections in the future. And the history has shown that they've done a good part of that in the past. And they've got 2.4 billion users. And if you start banking all those users and they believe the information that you're telling them, it shows this like level of pooled trust that could just up in your system that you've been running for a long time. And, with Bitcoin, they don't really see that because they don't see the user base. And if they do, and they start digging into it, we know. I mean, the amount of Bitcoin users isn't like great in number of, this scale of 2.4 billion users, if that is the case. But I mean, like, this seems to be the thing everybody's frightened about. But it certainly is doing this job of giving governments a reason to go after the space with a level of force they didn't have before. And, I mean, it's I don't really think it's going to happen either, because it's just going to be something that the governments will mostly want to nip in the butt before it ever starts, unless you go to a government like Bahrain or something, and maybe they'll institute it and they'll say like, yeah, like we want the Libra currency.
I don't see any rational government that would want to cede that kind of monetary power if they had a choice, which is why they're going to act with Libra, because unlike Bitcoin, here they have a choice.
I believe there was also an article today or yesterday about India saying absolutely no, and Facebook is not planning to launch Libra in India.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that. Yeah, we do have a story about India, but it's not that particular one. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like we've seen governments react. I mean, like we do have a story coming up in just a couple about the ECB where they're reacting too. I mean, people see that number of users and they start to think about, that level of value exiting their system. If like, let's say you're in country X and like your population, like half is Facebook users, and then Facebook says they're going to bank half your population, it's, well, then now you're going to take it real seriously. And that's what's happening across the spectrum with different countries and Facebook's announcement of this.
But let's stop a little bit here, because what China is afraid about is actually American domination through Libra, and Bitcoin is different. It's not a US domination of the financial system. It's more decentralized and democratic in that way, that you cannot just put it into one country. Hey, if this thing would be to take off, then the US or then that country would be profiting from it much more than my country. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big difference there.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I think, we saw the reaction to Bitcoin the way it was. I mean, it wasn't this level of like, we need to create our own because like this is an inevitability. They were still just looking at it as like something that they wanted to experiment with and figure out how exactly it worked and what they could do to, sort of steer it in a direction that they wanted. But, I mean, this is an open source space where, I mean, like if Twitter tomorrow said they wanted to institute something, I mean, then they're going to do it, or Facebook or whoever. And so, these things move a lot faster than these governments. And, you know, if they could provide an efficiency for a lot of people that they don't have without that sort of thing, then you could see a lot of that population move over. And, you know, with that goes a lot of like your ability to control that population. So yeah, it's definitely a big macro problem. But yeah, you guys have some more stuff on this?
No, it's just like this is corporations trying to go to war with governments when all the guns, the meme power, the belief in actual authority is all in the hands of the governments. Like that's just retarded. They're literally retarded.
Wait, the meme power is in the hands of the government? I've never known a government
Yes,
to be
as
very
in,
good at
like,
memes.
more people believe in the legitimacy of a government to do shit and dictate shit than a corporation by a landslide.
Well, actually, I watched a YouTube video a while ago, which was actually trying to figure out what if Jeff Bezos would be able to rule the world or not, and it seemed like he would have a pretty good chance of taking of doing world domination. So, but I will refresh my memories. That what was the exact reasoning there. So for
The
example,
retard.
one is that they control, it's not the government who controls the information anymore, not really Facebook, not really companies, but they could have more control than government, for example.
It's just that's not the reality right now, no para. And like this is just purely objectively stepping back and looking at this as an impartial chess game. This was just a retarded move.
For fuck's
It
sake,
was
you
retarded.
are in the Middle East for 10 years now and can't even get rid of ISIS, like that's how ineffective your guns are,
Well, no, that's more just like never mind. I'm not even opening that can of worms. Just they're retarded. Janine,
When should we go on to the next
you're up.
retarded agency?
Yes,
That so as a counterpoint, here's an example of how the government is not good at communicating with people. So before I get into the specific story, which is about a response to a FOIA request, for anyone who doesn't know, FOIA stands for the Freedom of Information Act, and it was intended to enshrine the right to access information about, for the most part, public institutions. I don't know, because it varies from country to country and jurisdiction about which agencies are covered under this, but in the US, I think it's relatively broad in terms of mostly government institutions or any company that is contracted or subcontracted to do public services. So it might surprise you to know that this right to access information extends to pretty much everyone, because there's no nationality requirement for FOIA requests in the US. So if you're interested in doing more of that, you can be a US citizen or a European national or Japanese or whatever. You can submit a FOIA request to a number of institutions in the US. And you can go to FOIA.gov and the National Freedom of Information Coalition for more. But if you haven't heard of Jason Leopold, he's apparently the king of FOIA. And just before the show started, I actually saw him tweeting about various responses that he's recently received, including 559 pages of internal operations documents from the NSA that he's been working for 5 years to acquire. And back in April of this year, he received a response to a request to the IRS about Bitcoin. and there were 969 documents in that response. So probably not many people have read them all, let alone seen them if you're not following that kind of space. But as I talked about in BD episode 172 and 177, we were expecting a response from the IRS about tax guidance for U.S. persons on cryptocurrencies on the 30th of May. And obviously that date has long since passed, and Coin Center published a blog post to note that fact recently, as well as to point out that Jason Leopold's FOIA response from April has a number of interesting documents in it that basically show they were aware more than 5 years ago of there being gaps in their guideline that they were, at that time, they were about to publish it, or they had published it because it was in 2014. And so they were aware of issues like calculating fair market value of a cryptocurrency whenever there was a taxable event. They were aware of it not being clear under what circumstances the Foreign Bank and Financial Accounts FBAR and the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, FATCA, were being triggered and so on. So none of these issues have been cleared up after 5 years, but they were aware of them being an issue. So if you want to read all those documents, I think, the first couple are mostly from, I think, a Wall Street presentation or something. And there's also a number of emails. Most of them are redacted heavily. So not super useful or revealing, but revealing in the sense that it shows they were aware of these issues. So yeah, what up, IRS? As an organization who imposes financial penalties on people who miss deadlines, I would expect you to be I would not expect you to be more than a month late to reply on this request, especially when your deadline was self-imposed. So you better get on that.
Wait, I have even better insight to show you how hypocritical this is. That the IRS doesn't have the guidelines, but they are one of the largest customer of Cij Journalism.
Yeah, of course they are. And I think I didn't read it, but I saw an article recently that something about the IRS, instead of going to cryptocurrency companies or even chain analysis companies, they're actually going to make requests to Google and those companies where they can see, like, get access to whether you've downloaded a particular application, and then they would tailor their investigations in terms of like who they audit and stuff to people who have actually downloaded cryptocurrency applications. So they would completely skip doing any requests, because obviously people are using applications and services that are based in a number of countries around the world, and it can be hard to get them to respond. But if you're obviously going to ask Google, they're right there very neatly in California. So that would obviously give you a bunch of information. Also helps that Google is basically the private version of the NSA. So
Yeah, it's the civilian side intelligence agency. But yeah, for sure, I'm sure they do that, where they can narrow in on who to target with that sort of information, as far as who's downloading what apps and who's Googling the price of Bitcoin and all that information. But I think really, like, those guys, nowadays it's like most exchanges have their own group of blockchain analysis people in the background, and they're instituted a lot more heavy KYC AML, over the past year, to the point to where now I think that if the IRS wanted to get some more information to beat in on a particular individual, they just go directly to the exchanges at this point. Like, that's what I think they would do. I'm sure that the chain analysis guys, or whichever analytic company it is that markets themselves strictly as analytics, I'm sure they're, reaching out to them too. But I imagine those guys would be more for investigative stuff, as far as like with darknet markets and things like that.
Well, data is data. It's just a matter of how you are organizing and accessing it. And they have the data, so they can use it for many, many different things. So don't worry about that. They will be valuable for IRS too.
Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, this just kind of highlights that the IRS is like hypocrisy with all these government agencies, really, as far as like what the level of law enforcement they're supposed to be enforcing and what they actually do. And yeah, IRS is huge about deadlines, and then they don't abide by their own deadline. A lot of this, I think, has to do with that. Just yeah, you lie in the face of public to try and obscure like people's ability to figure out what the truth is. All right.
Taxation is rape.
Oh yeah, there we go. Somebody had to say it. Rape, though, I thought it was just theft. Holy crap.
No, it's rape.
All right. I don't know how. I mean, like for sure, taxation is way overdone. I think that there's some a lot of stuff that needs to be cleared out. So, was there any more on this, or we can go back into a little bit of geopolitics here?
We can go on.
All right. So this past week on Twitter, I saw some interesting discussion being brought up around this article from Billy Bambro titled "New Euro Central Bank Boss Christine Lagarde Made a Serious Bitcoin Warning." And you guys might remember Christine as the managing director of the IMF. She's been there since 2011, and we brought her up many times on this show when discussing the IMF's position. Okay, so the article discusses Christine's nomination to the president of the European Central Bank and what implications that could have on Bitcoin and crypto. She will be replacing Mario Draghi, who didn't say much about the subject of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies other than to say they are highly risky assets. While Christine has been fairly open in her discussion about how blockchain, not Bitcoin, can solve a lot of the world's problems, the major difference between Mario and Christine is one's a PhD in economics and the other is a politician. Christine has discussed the IMF's special drawing right being rolled into its own crypto. And last we really dug into the IMF, it was a discussion on their blog post, Cashing In, How to Make Negative Interest Rates Work. In that post, the IMF discusses the possibility of creating a cashless society by making the risk of holding cash as costly as bank deposits. The proposal is for central banks to divide the monetary base into two separate local currencies, cash and electric money. E-money will be issued only electronically and would pay the policy rate of interest, and cash would have an exchange rate, the conversion rate, against e-money. So in theory, this would allow negative interest rates without throwing the system into shock. Christine told CNBC back in April of this year, quote, "I think the role of the disruptors in anything that is using distributed ledger technology, whether you call it crypto, assets, currencies, or whatever, that is clearly shaking the system. We don't want to shake the system so much that we would lose the stability that is needed," close quote. This quote and others she's made in the past have some excited about her newly appointed position, saying it'll be a great move for Bitcoin in the crypto space. Senior market analyst at the brokerage eToro, Maddie Greenspan, said, quote, "Several people have pointed out to me already is that the next ECB boss is incredibly crypto friendly. Not Bitcoin, of course, but she has advocated already for state-backed cryptocurrencies as well as settlement tokens like XRP and JPM coin. We can expect that someone so crypto-friendly in such a position will be good for the industry as a whole," close quote. I think if you look at that narrow bandwidth of information and you are just in crypto, then you will most likely interpret that as a move, that is a positive move. However, if you're in Bitcoin and you understand the greater systemic risks to negative interest rates and the tyranny of this proposed fractional reserve cashless society, you might be thinking twice. The discussion was spurred on Twitter in our space from Ansel tweeting out this article saying, quote, "The crackdown is closer than many of us realize. The quickly approaching financial crisis will give major governments the perfect excuse to aggressively regulate Bitcoin," close quote, which a lot of people took issue with saying regulate Bitcoin, but we understand he means regulate individuals' ability to use Bitcoin. And then another tweet by Raoul Pal laid out the blanket case of bank failures all across Europe with detailed charts and information to make the case. I highly suggest our viewers go through his tweet thread in the show notes, but here's two that help move our discussion along today. Quote, "So, The knock-on effects are all lining up to push one bank after another over the cliff of death, and there ain't a thing the ECB can do about it, as they have only one mandate: inflation. They have to cut rates, and this is why Christine Lagarde has been brought in. The ECB is going to need to become political. It is going to have to rescue an EU-wide banking system and put the banks into the state hands and buy the extra government debt, and they're going to need to force fiscal reforms and massive fiscal stimulus, close quote. So in summation, the ECB has moved out the PhD economist in favor of the politician to build the narrative and bend the will of the people to favor central banking. The regulation incoming could be as draconian as recent proposals we've seen in India, or it could be just enough to make their e-dollar competitive. Either way, I think this spells out. This doesn't spell out the best future for Europe. When Christine took over the IMF in 2011, the first order of business was Greece, and we saw what happened there. Let's hope it's not our first order of business to do the same to Europe. So, considering the discussion we just had with Facebook and China and Libra and what's going on with the European Central Bank, what do you guys think about Christine moving over from the IMF to ECB?
So a couple of things there. Maybe the only thing I want to highlight is that Christine, she was crypto friendly, but this also means she somewhat understands the space. But I believe she actually understands the potential disruption that can come from Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And the problem is that she has been elected to be the gatekeeper of this space. So, and she understands what's going on. So I don't know. It doesn't look good. Even if she's crypto friendly, her job is to not be crypto friendly, but to protect the euro. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think of her as crypto friendly at all, because if she's basically part of this group of people that are advocating for, making cash more difficult to use, and like, sorry, I'm a cash-based person just because I find it far easier and I like having privacy, and I like the fact that, if I go out to a store or a restaurant, I don't have to worry about whether my stupid plastic card will work or not because I have the money with me. Like, that's just the basic reality. That's why I use it. So anyone who is trying to take that, take my normal financial choice away from me is not my friend, and I don't think is a friend to cryptocurrencies either.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are right on target there. I mean, like the IMF that she served now for over 8 years. I mean, they've got close relations with the Bank of International Settlements, who runs the FATF. And I mean, like, we know that the Financial Action Task Force recent, guidelines that they handed down over the past couple of years now, like their stance really on this space. And yeah, I do not think that she is going to be friendly to the space at all. But for sure, this is something where it's just a bigger part of this, like, as far as this bigger play of, Singapore, China, what's going on with like different political parties in different countries. I mean, like, yeah, this is all about what they call stability risk. I mean, like, I was looking through it right before I jumped into the story. It's like India said they're skeptical, and South Korea said they're worried about stability risk. And a lot of this stuff has to do with, yeah, keeping that information flow and the people all together. And, if they have to, introduce like a Facebook Libra currency to kind of try and switch everybody over into their own sort of state controlled e-dollar or something, like, yeah, I think that's the move. I don't think that they're really friendly. I think they're just like maniacal. They're like, they know enough information to try and take over, like try and control the system, whatever part of the system they can control.
And before I let you go to Cuba, I just want to note that actually Christine is one of the more sensible people. I have been listening to her talks 2 or 3 years ago, and I think she's one of the more sensible people among all those central bankers, IMF people. So
She's a
it can be
politician.
difficult.
I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I mean, like, she's a politician. She's supposed to, get you to think that.
Yeah,
Shinobi?
but most politicians don't get me to think that. She was even giving a talk back then that was so cryptic and man, I have to dig that up. It was interesting, but she's a very strange woman, not what you would expect. Don't say she's a politician. She's somewhat different, I think.
I mean, it's like they're just doing the inevitable. They're trying to undermine the economic incentives and actually compete with Bitcoin, and they can't. Like if they do all of the things you need to do to really fully compete with Bitcoin, you tear all of your own influence apart and wind up with a fraction of the power that you have right now. And it's just, I don't think they'll do it. And two, like the systemic shock that will cause is exactly what they're trying to avoid.
All right. Yeah. I guess that really kind of depends on your region and your position. I mean, you kind of set me up for a good segue there because, I mean, like, got some nations that aren't necessarily, they've been in system shock for a long time. So we've talked a good deal about Latin American countries and their move into the crypto economic system being almost natural from the decades of hyperinflation seen in those regions. I think we are all aware that countries like Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, Argentina, and even Mexico are taking Bitcoin seriously. They have lived in strife under the current banking regime for a very long time. There are a few other countries in that area that have yet to flip into these new economic systems where they could very much use the relief. One of those is Cuba. Now, it looks like they are ready to take those initial steps. Cuba has a unique history of being a state run economy since the early days of the Cold War. And that's all kind of changing now with the addition of the Mariel Special Economic Zone and a reintroduction of capitalism to the area that is bringing in tourists. However, Cuba's closest ally is Venezuela, and the support for the Maduro government has landed them under more U.S. sanctions, hurting that new level of economic output. While at the same time, the problem is being exacerbated from Venezuela not being able to provide aid to the little island nation. There was a roundtable discussion on the state-controlled TV with the new president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, and his cabinet, where the economic minister, Alejandro Gil Fernandez, said, quote, "We are studying the potential use of cryptocurrency in our national and international commercial transactions, and we are working on that together with academics," close quote. He goes on to say that the government is also broadening a series of measures aimed at decentralizing and improving state-run company performance and stimulating local production, substitution of imports, and increased exports. This new president and his cabinet have a lot to prove as they've only been in office since April of 2018, and this looks like his first major test to show his ability to govern around a scourge that has faced the nation for the better part of a century. It looks like they are taking this situation seriously, and it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. They could double down on the Maduro government and start working with the Petro, or they could build from the ground up. We'll have to see, but there's one guy out there already pumping himself into the crypto Cuba position. John McAfee can't resist those Havana nightlife nights and has offered to help on Twitter saying, quote, "Cuba is planning to use cryptocurrency to get around the 63 years of economic strangulation imposed upon 14 million Cuban people by the insanity of the U.S. government. Finally, a large-scale, real-world application for cryptocurrencies. If Cuba wants my help, I am here," close quote. All right, guys. So what do you think about Cuba's position in the space, and should they take McAfee up on his offer?
God. Oh God. Jesus.
McAfee offered the FBI that he's going to decrypt the iPhone of I don't know, some terrorists. So he's very very quick to offer things.
Dude, the last thing we need is John McAfee doing something like that. Like, Jesus Christ. Him going to Belize was like trying to set himself up as like some drugged out, like cyberpunk fucking millionaire. Like, do not give him a second chance at that. No.
Yeah, that guy wants to be a leader, man. A little too much. Like, he ran for president under the Libertarian Party before. Was that in 2016 or no? He expressed his like he wanted to run again in 2020 under some label, maybe an independent. But for sure, he just like, yeah, you don't want him over there, Cuba. But for sure, it'll be interesting to see Cuba take a position on this with Venezuela being their number one ally. Like, I mean, I could see them being like, hey, well, we're going to support the Petro. But I mean, like, if they did that, you know, they're a lot closer to the United States than Venezuela. And, you know, we got a big ass Navy and they're just an island. I don't know. Like, I think they might build their own thing from the ground up.
Well, I mean,
He's an interesting character. Do you remember that when he sent a message to Jihan, I think he published it that, how was it that, Jihan, you have the largest army and I offer you my shield. This was about the Bcash stuff. So yeah, he's an interesting character, that's for sure.
he's a crackpot.
All right. Well, let's just go ahead and get this quick update out of the way from, the crackpot. So, Venezuela and the situation evolving with the Petro currency. The Twitter account for the Ministry of Popular Power, Economics, and Finance put out a quote from Nicolas Maduro early last week saying, I give the express order for the opening of the Petro's ticket offices in all the branches of the Bank of Venezuela, close quote, which sounds like Maduro has ordered the Bank of Venezuela to open public access to the Petro that could be used to help move, the fledgling project along. I mean, it's not really got that much use since basically all that they've got right now is that people can, they have to use it to purchase their passports. And then there's pension programs that have been changed over to the Petro. But outside of that, I don't believe anyone is taking it too seriously, which might include the Bank of Venezuela. So now it looks like they have to be ready to handle the Petro balance of people that might want to actually access it there for the public. So, just another quick update there as far as what's going on in Venezuela with Maduro and the Petro. So I don't know. We'll see if people actually start using it.
See, this is what happens when the government tries to do something like this in a place where their currency is going to shit. People don't trust it. And you have to keep failing while trying to ram it down their throats.
All right, man. So let's just get through this last piece of geopolitics and what's going on. So, another country where regulation and implementation are a popular topic is India. So most of us know the Indian Bitcoin and cryptocurrency scene has been struggling to survive after the Reserve Bank of India's issued circular. And government officials have been staying relatively silent on the subject. It's been hard to gauge how India will approach the space. Well, in that environment, sometimes no news is good news, and that's what we're seeing out of India's finance ministry. The finance minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, gave a presentation for the 2019-2020 budget, and there was no mention of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency regulation. And Indian crypto news platform Crypto Canoon tweeted out a poll asking the Indian people their sentiment for the no news budget event. And 44% said no news is good news, 10% said it's possibly bad news, while 46%, the largest, said they don't care about it at all. So I'm going to say, no news, probably a positive sign. I think if they wanted the harshest stance against the cryptocurrency space, then we would have already seen the government endorsement of the RBI circular, which we've just heard them not say anything about it. Now, there is one more sign that the country could be moving in a different direction than the circular, and that's the Indian police are about to undergo some special training for the space. The Ministry of Home Affairs is providing a police training course to create domain expertise in the field of cryptocurrency related crime. It will be a 2-day course titled Investigation of Cases Involving Cryptocurrencies, which it's an educational class where they'll get an introduction to blockchain technology, a discussion of standing legal traditions, and interpretations of major crimes in the crypto space. And yeah, all that in 2 days. But it's scheduled to take place the first week of September, and it's not mandatory or anything, but there's a group of officers that are going to be nominated to attend, and some have stressed an interest in the space, and they're going to attend. So yeah, neither of these pieces of news are like good or positive, but I mean, like it does show a different direction than what the RBI is trying to push. So, I mean, that's probably about as good as we're going to get out of India right now, other than like just a full reversal of what's been going on. So, yeah, like that's what else is going on as far as geopolitics and Bitcoin. You guys got any comment about this as far as is this a good thing, a bad thing, or just like whatever?
Well, I mean, anything showing that they're not going to go through with that kind of draconian shit is a good thing. But, the police training kind of tells me a different story. And it also makes the ending seem a lot worse because there's no way you can competently train a non-technical police officer in how to deal with Bitcoin in 2 days. So, like, why are they creating this position and this training if they're not going to do something? And like, think about the consequences of like that fast of a course in an area this complex.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get proper enforcement or proper education or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, like you're saying though, I mean, in like the idea of what they were talking about implementing, I guess this is probably a good thing. All right. So that's what's going on. What's going on with the Atlanta Fed?
Well, it was quite interesting. I had to like double check some of the dates because on July 1st, the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta issued a statement regarding the ransomware attack from March 2018, which was more than a year ago. And this post was authored by David Lott, who is a payments risk expert, and he summarizes that the ransomware attacks have been a growing threat and that these attacks often prevent customers from making payments, whether for traffic violations, business permits, or even marriage licenses. I would love to know the story about how someone's marriage was delayed because of a ransomware attack. He then writes, should ransomware targets pay the ransom? Law enforcement communities officially say no. In some cases, when victims pay the ransom, they never receive the decryption keys to regain access to their data, or the keys don't work. There's concern that payments only encourage the criminals to commit further attacks, sometimes against the same business and demanding additional money. It is not illegal for a business to make ransomware payments, and many, including Newark, New Jersey, paid $30,000, and others have done so. And then he ends with, a common entry point is through phishing of an employee to compromise legitimate system access credentials. As in business email compromises, the criminal conducts surveillance to learn about the different systems in operation and plans the initial attack to have the greatest possible impact. As we have stressed so often, prevention starts with employee education and the adoption of security best practices. In a future post, I will write more about prevention and mitigation practices. Oh, goody, yes. We are eagerly awaiting your year-old information security advice for organizations that use outdated versions of Windows. relatedly, via Kyle Torpy, I just saw an article that the U.S. Conference of Mayors passed a resolution to not pay ransomware demands in light of the more recent attack in Baltimore. And according to a Baltimore news station, the mayor, Jack Young, sponsored the resolution opposing payment to ransomware attack perpetrators, and the mayor of Las Vegas, Carolyn Goodman, co-sponsored it, and it was approved by their annual meeting last month. And Young supposedly said paying ransoms only gives incentive for more people to engage in this type of illegal behavior. I'm proud to unify with the U.S. Conference of Mayors to stand up against these types of attacks and show people that they will not take control of our cities. So yeah, bit of a slow response, but yeah, apparently the Fed in Atlanta is going to try and help people now.
Oh, it's pretty funny. I remember the last thing where we were talking about ransomware with Baltimore. It was like they were trying to get the NSA to fess up about the software being used to make that ransomware was like their software that got leaked, and NSA is just being hush about it. Like, yeah, I don't know. This is like one of those things where it's like, yeah, maybe paying it, that might be your only way around it. I mean, other than like actually building up, an infrastructure that could withstand those sort of security holes. And I mean, that's a little bit complicated, but that's really ultimately what I think these guys have got to do.
This is how the United States collapses. Ransomware, all the things.
It'd be really funny if someone managed to compromise government computers of the NSA and have them send the ransomware requests and make it look like the NSA was ransoming cities, and then the cities would be like, well, we're going to do it back to you. And so then they're basically just infecting each other with ransomware in order to pay their own ransomware demands.
Mutually assured destruction. Yeah, I mean, that's like, I don't know, that's the way you get rid of systems if you want. Just load up some virus on there. I did that in the 90s.
Wreck.
I remember. All right, yeah. We don't have to dig into that story. So, yeah, what's going on with Lightning nodes and exchanges? Looks like one of them finally adopted this move. Shinobi.
Well, it's not really adopting, I would say. More like them setting up a node. It's pretty much they've just established this node right now and have like a kind of breakdown informational page explaining the Lightning Network and how it works, and then like their connection information. And like honestly, the capacity is not that bad. They have like 12 BTC out of the 957 on the network and 242 connections to that much out of the 5,600 or so nodes online right now. So it seems more kind of like a branding and PR thing rather than like they've integrated into the platform in any way. But it's still nice to know that they're kind of keeping up with where the other layers in the protocol are going.
Yeah, that's where I kind of got excited when I saw this, and then I started looking at it again. I was like, oh, they just sort of spun up a node, and they're like showing us some statistics on it and everything, which, yeah, is in itself like that's interesting just to see that they're working with it and taking it seriously. But for sure, there's some guys that are already working on exchange infrastructure backends with Lightning, and that sort of stuff is going to come. I mean, the same goes with Liquid, I'm sure. So I mean, like that sort of back-end exchange infrastructure is coming. So yeah, at least they're spinning up a node.
That is a dead end, and any exchange that wastes time trying to integrate that in a serious way is just wasting time on a dead end.
Are you talking about Lightning infrastructure?
Yes.
All right. Well, I know some developers that for sure would, I mean, we got to build out all the things, test all the ways. I get where you're coming from, though.
dead end. But yep. That about wraps up the last story, unless Janine and Nopara have anything to say. Huh? 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 Huh?
I mean,
Huh?
I'm ready to go into final thoughts.
For fuck's sake. All right. Final thoughts it is.
So, how have we I don't know how I missed this. This apparently happened on May 29th, but how did we completely miss when Tony Hawk mentioned that he's had Bitcoin for 6 years?
I don't know. I don't care about sports.
I don't either. I just think it's cool that a very famous skateboarder is a Bitcoin OG.
Right, dude. It's fucking skateboarding's like anti-sports. What are you talking about, sports?
Dude, skateboarding is a sport now.
Well, I guess
It
you
has been
can.
for a while.
Yeah, whatever. But the whole sport of skateboarding is like, got a baby crying, man. I was gonna say,
Baby is upset that we're saying skateboarding is not a sport.
no. I mean, the whole goal of skateboarding was just to like, have some fun, and you might get hurt. But now all of a sudden they turned it into like a scoring system based off flips and tricks and stuff, and yeah, so they turned it into a sport. But yeah, that all took kind of marketing to develop that. But anyway, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Tony Hawk's been holding Bitcoin for 6 years. I'm surprised I didn't know that at all. But that's pretty cool, man. Good job, Tony. He understands a thing or two, man. 6 years, it's longer than I've been holding.
Yeah, famous dude. You do something I do.
All right. Well, I'm gonna move on to a final thought. There's no link here, but there's a other podcast maybe you guys have heard of called What Bitcoin Did. Like they did this episode, or he did this episode. Peter did an episode where he released it just the other day with the Bitcoin family. It was Jack Mallers, Brooke and Bill Mallers. It was really a fun episode. Like it was like an hour and 45 minutes, and they gave me a shout out. Like in the episode, they talk about how like I helped them, sort of figure out some stuff about cannabis, and so that's pretty cool. I wanted to just give a shout out back to them, and yeah, if you haven't listened to that episode, give it a listen. Shinobi in particular. I'm just trolling you, man. Get it real.
I'm gonna punch you the next time I see you, right?
Yeah,
I'm going to physically attack you.
I've been waiting to do this, so yeah, this is just a good spot, man. I mean, like they gave me a shout out. I got to give them a shout out, man. So shout out to thanks for the shout out.
Rick was a soldier, so
It's okay, Shinobi. Peter McCormick is a Bitcoin maximalist now.
Stop watching.
Yeah, dude, Peter's a Bitcoin maximalist. Did you see what he tweeted this morning, dude?
Dude, Peter is doing what's profitable for Peter because he is a clueless doofus who doesn't understand anything except what makes him money.
Yep, there's that hard wall.
Nopara, baby, cough up the final thought.
So actually, I want to talk about BitPay because you can't pay for BitPay. If a website, if you want to pay for something with Bitcoin and they have BitPay integration, then I don't know what the heck to do. It just doesn't work. There is no address, and I was trying with Bitcoin Core, but I didn't have money on my Bitcoin Core, and when I clicked on pay with wallet, and then it started to complain, oh yeah, it looks like you're using Bitcoin Core. Wait, how the hell do you know that? Okay, whatever. So yes, I'm using Bitcoin Core, and then it started to tell me the pop-up that, oh, if you enable RBF, then there is a problem. Please don't enable RBF. And then so did you ever try to pay something where there is a BitPay firewall because you have to call it that BitPay firewall. So
No, any service that uses BitPay, I just no. I'm not going to touch it.
Well, there's stripping tools that'll grab an address and an amount and shit out of the BIP70 request, but I don't see how that happens without the tool making the connection. So, yeah, I
I
don't
was
even know where to start.
I was doing it manually in the past, but because I could only always figure out what was the address and the amount, but not anymore. It just doesn't.
Yeah. All right, though. I guess, yeah. I guess my final thought is I have finally decided or realized or whatever what I have been shooting for aesthetically with things on this show. So I'm about to start bringing some Adult Swim shit to shit, everybody. So get prepared for that. Yeah. Adios. See you guys next Wednesday.
Later, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.